Welcome to Watch, Review, Repeat. This is the podcast where two best friends discuss the latest in film and television and then do it all over again the following week. My name is Colton Brown, and joining me is Andrew Meadows.
Wow. We joined each other in 2020.
That is
Several
very
weeks into
true.
2020.
Several weeks now, yeah. Happy New Year, I guess.
Happy New Year to you, man. And our listeners. Happy New Year to everybody.
Happy new decade and such.
New decade and such, yeah.
I think we traditionally consider, this to be the start of a new decade, right?
That's right.
All right. So, yeah, it's a momentous occasion, and we are celebrating by concluding our coverage of Star Wars, the Skywalker Saga. We recorded on the rest of the Skywalker Saga episodes 1 through 8 in the same room when I was down in Florida for a Christmas vacation. Christmas has come and gone. The New Year has come and gone, or at least the first has come and gone, I guess. Right. I should say.
Right.
New Year will be with us for quite some time, you might say. Approximately 12 months, typically.
Hopefully, as long as the world doesn't blow up. Yeah,
we'll see. Things might get a little topsy-turvy in November. We shall see. So it's been a couple weeks, but we are here to finally round out our conversation on Star Wars. Now, obviously, the gap in terms of listening for our listeners, the gap between episode releases, I guess I should say, is going to be a little bit smaller than it is. So hopefully everything kind of comes together as a nice, seamless package of us talking about Star Wars for hours upon hours upon hours. The Rise of Skywalker, which is what we're talking about here, Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, Episode 9. It's been out in theaters for a few weeks now. We've seen it at least a couple times each. That's and right. We've had time for it to kind of sit with us, I guess, We hoped to record on it when we were both in Florida together. That obviously didn't happen. We're now, states apart now. But it is kind of nice to have that ability to reflect on it a little bit more, because it's a movie that contains a lot. There's a lot of information in this movie. It's the end of the Skywalker Saga, which Star Wars means so much to us, as we discussed on that episode. So it's a lot to take in, and it's a lot to process. It's a lot to handle, and it's going to be a lot to talk about. And we're going to talk about it at length, I'm sure, a little bit later in this episode, but I'm glad that we had a little bit of time away, but I am glad that we got the chance to talk about a couple things while I was down there, and so here we are. So, we're starting off 2020 with a bang with a couple of big Star Wars episodes. Do you have any Star Wars related fun facts you want to share?
I do.
The Rise of Skywalker specific, if that's not too much of a tall task.
I don't know if our listeners are aware, but Carrie Fisher was in these movies, which you would
hot take
surely say, how is she in these movies? Because she has since passed away. Well, I'll tell you how she was in these movies. They pulled archives, is what they did. J.J. Abrams had a lot of unused footage from The Force Awakens, and he actually dove into to pull flashback clips and everything else. They pulled from the Lucasfilm archives, and they pulled from what is it? The Return of the Jedi. They pulled footage from The Return of the Jedi, and then they actually used Carrie Fisher's daughter as a body double, and they kind of did some Hollywood magic on it, and that's how Carrie Fisher was had younger portions of her there, and then she was also older in certain scenes as well. So a little bit of everything there, but they did some Hollywood magic, and Carrie Fisher was in the movie.
And I think it was a good decision. I think I feel like in the build-up to this movie, and obviously prior to Carrie's passing, after they'd filmed The Last Jedi, the word was that Episode 9 was going to be Leia's movie. The way that Episode 7 was Han's movie, Episode 8 was Luke's movie, Episode 9 would have been Leia's movie, and so each of the trio from the original Star Wars, from the original trilogy, would have kind of had their own film where they had center focus, and then obviously circumstances turned out to be what they were, and that was no longer practicable. But I guess you could say they made the best of a really unfortunate situation.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that they at least were able to comb through what they had to give us the opportunity to see Carrie on screen one more time with the blessing of her family and of course with Billie Lourd's, literal participation. She's been in all 3 of these sequel movies.
And it's pretty amazing. I mean,
so
the footage,
it's really cool.
The footage that they had grabbed, like it makes you wonder what was in The Force Awakens to where they had this footage.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of times, and maybe we'll talk about it when we get into the movie itself in a little bit more detail, but I think there's a few points where you can tell it's clearly doctored in a way that she's either not interacting with the character that she's actually interacting with,
right?
Or sometimes she is, it's sometimes you can kind of, I think, see the seams of, oh, this is her, this is like canned dialogue that they wrote around, and sometimes maybe they just repurposed the actual dialogue here to make it work for the movie itself. So yeah, what JJ called it like puzzle pieces is kind of how they kind of view it, and it's kind of an interesting perspective, and I think it's a complicating factor for making the film itself, and that you have to construct it around things that don't give you free reign to just make the movie that you obviously ideally want to make.
Right.
So it's an inherent limitation, but sometimes that's the kind of thing that makes filmmaking so amazing. Is that it's kind of like, oh, well, if I had $300 million to make this film, I could do whatever the fuck I want. But if I have $5 million to make this film, it's a very different film. But sometimes the challenge forces you to be creative in sometimes positive ways, maybe sometimes negative ways. But, it's an interesting filmmaker's challenge that they kind of had to wrestle with. And I think, again, we'll talk about it maybe more a little bit later. But I think what they ended up doing, it was very fitting. It was a nice tribute to Carrie and the legacy that she has. There's a version of episode 9 where she dies in the opening crawl, right? And I'm glad that they didn't go that route. I'm glad that we got to see her on screen one last final time,
right?
Just in general, obviously, but also within Star Wars, because
should have very fitting role in this movie. I think
it's such a massive, important character for Star Wars. I think it's absolutely critical that we saw more of her. So I'm glad that we did. I'm glad they found a way to do it, and yeah. Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. Well, that's a little bit of a tease for what we're going to talk about in just a little while. But since it has been a couple weeks since we last sat down to record, wouldn't you guess it? We've got some news. We've got a bit more news than we have had on the last few episodes. So buckle up, friends. We may be in for a bit of a longer episode, but as I said, hours upon hours upon hours of Star Wars. And if you're listening to this now, there's a good chance you've already listened to our coverage of the Skywalker Saga, which was many hours. So, without further ado, let's dive into the news and see if we can wade through this at a decent pace, because we're going to have a lot to say about the Rise of Skywalker. It's a fucking movie with a lot of fucking things going on in it. So
a lot of moving pieces.
I'll kick this off if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the Golden Globe Awards.
Yeah, let's talk about those.
Happened, aired literally a week ago, the 5th of January. Interesting, thing, the Golden Globes, I think the Oscars, the Academy Awards kind of usually get more clout, it seems like, but the Golden Globes are always like a close second, I think, in terms of reputation and such. And the Golden Globes, I mean, it was just purely in terms of nominations, not even getting into the winners. The nominations were interesting. Like, Best Motion Picture Drama had 3 out of 5 films that were Netflix movies. And that's kind of unheard of.
Wow.
And I feel like the Academy has been very resistant to streaming platforms, and it seems like maybe the Hollywood Foreign Press, who are the ones that vote on this, are kind of trending in the opposite direction. The Golden Globes includes TV awards as well, and there was not a single show that aired on network television that was included in the nominations. Not a single one. Every single show was streaming. So obviously we can see what the Hollywood Foreign Press is watching, which is kind of what's dictating the nominations and
but so is
winners,
everybody else, though.
But it's such a changing world. It's interesting, and again, I think the Academy has been resistant to that. I think the Emmys have been pretty traditionally network, obviously, until recently. But I think that the Emmys have done a better job of balancing network versus streaming. But again, it's just an interesting phenomenon. But yeah, I mean, streaming it's the thing, right? And most things that come out on network just end up on streaming one way or another anyway. So maybe the Hollywood Foreign Press will watch that shit in a year and a half when it gets dumped on streaming at some point. But they sure as shit didn't watch it recently. I don't need to go through the entire list, that's obviously a little bit excessive, but I figured, we are going to do, I guess this is technically the first time we're flagging it for listeners, but of course we're going to be doing our look back at 2019 ourselves. We are going to be talking about things coming out in 2020, as we have done for the past couple of years. We'll probably do that towards the end of the month, but there may be some crossover, with how the Golden Globes picked. There may be no crossover whatsoever.
Gotcha.
We'll see. But just purely in terms of kind of things that stood out. Chernobyl got a few awards. We both watched that. I think we were big fans of Chernobyl.
Blown away by that show.
Stellan Skarsgård won for Best Supporting Actor in I think a limited series.
Okay.
I think I haven't watched it. Obviously, I haven't watched everything, but Jared Harris, I think, kind of got snubbed a little bit. I think he was nominated for his performance in Chernobyl, but he lost. I can't remember exactly to who. But, he lost to Russell Crowe in The Loudest Voice, which is the Roger Ailes thing on Showtime. So, stuff like that. Olivia Colman won for The Crown. She's great. Apparently, Brian Cox won for Succession. He's great on that. So, TV, I think you said Chernobyl itself, the show won for Best Limited Series. Fleabag captured musical or comedy, and then Succession on HBO captured Best Drama. Over on the motion picture side of things, Parasite won Best Foreign Language Film. It's an excellent pick, I must say. Best Motion Picture Animated was kind of an interesting category. The Lion King was nominated for Animated, which it technically is. It lost, however.
It is animated.
It lost. It's a tough category, I thought. Frozen 2, How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World, The Lion King, Toy Story 4 were all nominated, but they all lost out to Missing Link, which was the latest film from Laika. It's the studio that did Kubo and the Two Strings.
Snowman? The Abominable Snowman?
No. I think that one's something else. This one was about Bigfoot. It was like a claymation one about Bigfoot. It came out early in the year. I think maybe February, March, something like that, called Missing Link.
And it won?
Won.
Oh, yeah. It had, what's his face in it?
I had Hugh Jackman as, I think he was one of the human characters in it, but anyway. Just kind of going through the rest of them, I guess. Tarantino won for screenplay for Hollywood, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Sam Mendes won Best Director for 1917, which is now finally out. We haven't seen it yet. At least I haven't seen it yet.
I'm going to go see it soon. Real soon.
I think I'm going to go see it real soon myself. But Brad Pitt won for Hollywood. Laura Dern won for Marriage Story. Taron Egerton won for Best Performance in Rocket Man. Aquafina. Your girl Aquafina won for The Farewell. Joaquin Phoenix won for his performance in Joker. Renee Zellweger won for Judy, her performance in Judy. And then kind of the I guess the big two, best movie awards. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood won for Best Motion Picture, Musical, or Comedy. And 1917.
Isn't that so weird? How musicals and comedies are grouped together in the same fucking category?
It's a little weird. It's like, I think you can't have, you usually don't have 5 good musicals in a single year, so you can't have its own category.
You nominate Cats?
Like you'd have exactly. You'd have to put Cats in there by default. It's like, shit, we've got to fill it up to 5. You got to put fucking Cats in here, and then Cats will always be known as the film that was nominated for Best Motion Picture Musical, and everyone knows that's a crock of shit. So I think it's they just do a weird melding of genres. But the Academy Awards doesn't delineate. It's just fucking Best Motion Picture or whatever, and they nominate up to 10. But, Cats wouldn't make the bill, presumably.
Right.
But you could have, a really good musical that does get up there, and you just have your one kind of representative. Rocket Man was nominated, and I guess that's technically a musical. Didn't win, obviously, because I guess apparently comedy reigned supreme in 2020. But it's a little silly, I agree. 1917 was the big winner for Best Motion Picture Drama, so it's one that we will need to see and talk about very soon. So anyway, long story short, Golden Globes, hosted by Ricky Gervais. I didn't actually watch the broadcast. I think they announced that Tina Fey and Amy Poehler will be I'm losing my words. They will be hosting. Hosting. I couldn't think of the word hosting. They will be hosting the next awards. So that should be a pretty fun.
Yeah, what's his face? There was a lot of controversy there with the host of this year's.
Well, yeah, I mean, Gervais is just kind of a shitbag on Twitter, so I think everyone's kind of groaning when they're like, "Oh, seriously, they brought him back for like the 5th time." Like, enough is enough. But
he had that big rant about I don't know. Well, I can't even remember what the rant was about. I read about it.
I don't know.
He's like, you Hollywood people, we don't want to hear about your fucking politics or anything. Take your fucking award and go sit down.
Yeah, I just kind of tracked the winners, and I didn't see anything like, like Joker was nominated for Best Motion Picture Drama, and I was just, rooting for it to lose, of course. So other than that, like, it was pretty low stakes for me. So Jaquan won, but he did
Jaquan won,
and I think if you're gonna hand any awards to that film, I think that makes sense. I think the composer won as well. I don't remember the score at all from it, but
yeah,
maybe it's good.
To say. The score won, but yeah.
Anyway, so Golden Globes 2020, it happened. Those are some of the winners.
It was a thing.
It's probably more than I intended to announce when I started talking about it. But, once you get going, you just get going. So, yeah, that's that. What do you got?
Tell you what I'm going to get going on. I'm going to get going on... We got a fucking trailer for Devs.
Okay. Well, tell me more about it. I want to know.
Devs is a show apparently produced... Is it produced or directed? Probably an episode's directed, at least.
I think it's directed.
Let me look it up. I can't remember.
I think it's directed, perhaps in its entirety.
Director, yeah. Alex Garland. My boy Alex is directing a show called Devs for FX. But it's going to be... do you know about this? It's on Hulu, or is it on FX, or is it on both?
I saw it because it's like FX on Hulu, and I'm like, well, what the fuck does that mean? So
right.
I think it's coming to Hulu. I think it's a streaming show, but I guess like FX maybe produced it or something, because FX is now a Disney property and Hulu is now a majority-owned Disney platform. I think this might have been something that was probably originally intended to air on FX prior to Disney gaining control of Fox, if I had to guess. So I think it's an FX production, but I think that Disney obviously sees the strength in streaming platforms. I mean, it might be one of those things where it airs on both, I guess, maybe. Okay. But I think if nothing else, it's coming to Hulu in March, I think.
Which I'm real excited. Alex Garland did Sunshine. Alex Garland did... he wrote Sunshine, I think.
He wrote Sunshine, correct.
Which is Danny Boyle movie. But Alex Garland did Annihilation. He
wrote and directed.
Yeah, Ex Machina.
Wrote and directed.
Fucking awesome. And now he's doing this. Yeah. I think we said it last time. I think we said it on the Annihilation episode. When Alex Garland puts his name on something, whether he writes it, directs it, you kind of just keep your ears to the ground and just you go see it or you watch it whenever it comes out.
And I gotta say, I mean, watching this trailer, I don't know what the fuck this show is about.
No.
But it looks weird. It looks out there.
I Googled it. And the synopsis on the Googs, on the right-hand side of the Googs, it says, suspecting foul play after her boyfriend's apparent suicide, a young software engineer for a cutting-edge tech company begins an investigation that uncovers a technology-based conspiracy that could change the world. And you got Nick Offerman there with like a halo above his head, which the imagery in this, and I mean, what do they say? Pardon the choir. What do they say it? Like part of the choir, like you're like whenever I don't know what I'm trying to say. Anyways, they Alex Garland's got striking imagery in all his shit.
Oh, absolutely.
And this is no different. This show looks fucking bonkers. So
yeah, and I enjoy that. I mean, in the same way that Ex Machina and Annihilation were bonkers, I see this being similar to that. Visually, tonally. But we've never seen Alex Garland in a TV medium, stretched across 8 episodes. Like, I'm curious to see what he does in terms of storytelling potential using a long form format. Yeah, so looks good. Good cast.
Nick Offerman looks fucking cool too.
Nick Offerman looks cool. He's got some long hair. Not his best look, I would say, but
no. Looks like a crazy old dude.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's whatever.
But no, it looks very interesting. And I as someone that is now a cord cutter, I don't have cable anymore. So hopefully what we're saying is true. That it is coming out to Hulu. From all indications, I'm seeing that it's coming to Hulu. But I do think it'll be an episode a week kind of drop. I think that's how Hulu typically operates. So that is one thing to keep an eye out for. March 5th is when it's premiering exclusively on FX on Hulu, whatever the fuck that means.
Yeah, they did a terrible job of trying to lay out what the fuck that is.
Yeah.
Whatever. We'll just have to Google it whenever March comes around.
It sure means something, doesn't it?
It does. Anyway, so that's coming out. I'm excited about it.
That is coming out. I got some news that I think you're going to be pretty fucking stoked for.
What do we got?
For being honest. Well, your boys over at the CW have renewed some shows.
Yes. What do we get more of?
Basically everything.
More Arrow?
Basically everything except for Arrow. Arrow I think has like 2 more episodes and then it's donezo.
Done forever?
Yeah, it's well, so what's happening with Arrow is I think there's a spin-off show that will kick out of Arrow that's
Felicity?
No, she's not even in this last season, apparently.
No?
Yeah, she's too good. She's too good for it. She's moved on. She's moved on from the CW. Now they're doing a Canaries show, which I think is supposed to have Laurel, Dinah, and the...
Laurel still in this shit?
Yeah, but it's alternate Laurel, It's evil reformed Laurel.
Where she's got that necklace thing? Gives her the power? Okay.
Maybe. I don't know. I haven't gotten that far. It's fine. And then Oliver and Felicity's daughter from the future will be in the show as well, because why not? Things that have been renewed. I mostly care about the Arrowverse stuff. I know you do too. Riverdale's been renewed. I'll just go ahead and let you know, just because I think you've probably been sweating for a couple minutes. You're now like, oh, fucking Riverdale better be in that renewal. How many
seasons of Riverdale are there?
4 is currently airing, so 5 will be the one.
Only 5 seasons of Riverdale?
Yeah, and
it seems like it's been around.
They haven't even finished making 4 of them, man.
Seems like it's been around for a fucking decade.
Half a decade, almost. The Flash will be coming back for a 7th season. Supergirl will be coming back for a 6th season. Black Lightning will be coming back for a 4th season. Legends of Tomorrow will be coming back for a 6th season. I'm surprised Legends has made it to 6th season. That's wild. I like Legends.
I think Legends is the best one out of all of them.
Yeah, Legends is fun as fuck, but it's like if any show should be on the chopping block, like in terms of viewership and stuff like that, that seems like the obvious candidate but it's fun because that's like the only show where like CW is kind of like also just like, fuck it, we'll just do what we want. I kind of enjoy that aspect of it. Batwoman, small correction, will be coming back for a 2nd season, and then there's a few others, more CW stuff that I am not privy to. Will also be coming back. It's basically their entire slate minus Arrow, which had a reduced episode order this season anyway. So the CW doesn't cancel shit, man. As much as Netflix and fucking Sci-Fi and shit want to cancel all their shit, CW just says we'll make more.
Just ride it. We ride the train.
We'll make more. So we got to give them props for that, if nothing else. So yeah, that's what I got on that front. I figured good news for you. Not
I got
for me.
Some
I don't
good
care.
News for you.
I don't care. Obviously, it's all for you. So what's your good news?
Good news for you. Something you'll be very excited for. Did you see the 2nd trailer for Birds of Prey?
Oh, fuck yeah, dude!
Totally change your perspective on the movie.
Well, Ewan McGregor put on a fucking black mask for this fucking trailer, so
yeah, he did.
I've done a 180 on this. I take it back. I've done a 360 on this.
Oh, and you're back to where you thought it was shit.
I think this is a better trailer.
Yes.
Than what we got before. I wouldn't say that I'm excited for this in any way whatsoever. My long-standing complaints are still long-standing. This is not a Birds of Prey movie. This is a Harley Quinn movie masked as a Birds of Prey movie, which still irritates me to no end. I think, it looks kind of stylish, I guess, for what it's going for. I think that it could be fine, but it's just, I don't, this is not,
I think it largely is
this is not what I asked for, I guess, is kind of my biggest hesitation.
Did you ask for anything Harley Quinn?
No, but I would have happily asked for a Birds of Prey movie sans Harley Quinn. And so that's, again, still is very frustrating for me. I think it'll be better than Suicide Squad.
That bar is set really high.
I know, but like, I just,
it does look stylish. It looks, it looks like it might have a couple of spots that might be like, haha, like you might be able to get a chuckle out of it a little bit, maybe. I like McGregor. I like him a lot. I have high hopes. Still haven't seen that the Shining sequel. Kind of want to see that one.
It's probably out on Blu-ray and such soon, if I had to guess.
I'll have to be looking for it, but I do like him. I think he's a great actor, so, I mean...
I like the cast here, too,
We'll see what they were given. That's the biggest thing. What were you given?
Yeah, so. I mean, it seems like it's closer in breed to kind of the earlier... Like, I feel like the recent DC stuff has been, like, okay at worst, but pretty good overall. Like, I like Shazam. Aquaman was fun. Yeah. Wonder Woman was good, and we saw the trailer for 1984, which is a lot more appealing, I think, than this is per se. But this just feels closer in tone and feel to a Suicide Squad.
DC.
Yeah. So that makes me a little just apprehensive off the bat. But A-list, we'll see. February 7th. I don't think there's a whole lot coming out in February in terms of film this year. There's no Black Panther, is what I'm saying. I don't think this is quite the Black Panther equivalent in terms of hype levels or anything like that. I don't think that you are the Bird of Prey, is what I'm saying. No Bird of Prey. But we'll probably go see it. Maybe we'll talk about it. I don't think there's going to be anything else coming out around it. I hope it's surprising, if nothing else, because I'm going to come in with low expectations just based on what I've seen so far. And if I'm pleasantly surprised, even if it's not groundbreaking in any sort of way, I think that would be a win overall.
Yeah. If it's not total shit, is what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. So if I get mediocre, I think I'll come away okay with it. You know what I mean? Like anything
better than Suicide Squad.
Anything better than Suicide Squad. Extremely low bar, obviously, as we've alluded to. But this has the potential, I think, to be fun. I'm not expecting good. I'm not coming in with any expectations of this being quality, but I think that there's a version of this film that could be pretty entertaining, breezy. As long as it doesn't overstay its welcome. And I think it could be fun, could be snappy, but. I think if it's closer in tone to Deadpool, that might work. Again, I don't know why the fuck Birds of Prey is the movie that's doing that tone. So I'll always have that complaint. But as long as they succeed at what they're going for, I think that can be okay.
There you go. All right, you heard it here first.
So maybe I'm being a little too optimistic based on what I've seen, but I'm detaching myself as much as I can. So that I can enjoy it as much as I can. February 7th, it's less than a month away. Wow, we don't have to wait a long time for Birds of Prey and the fabuloso emancipatio show of Harley Quinno. Well, as it turns out, we don't have to wait long for a long-lost movie, a long-lost property. The new fucking Mutants, man.
New Mutants is finally coming out?
The New Mutants is coming. We got a new trailer.
I feel like I watched a trailer like 8 years ago for that movie.
You know what? I got to look this up. I actually am very curious when the hell this trailer... Because this is the second trailer. All right, here we go. You ready for this shit?
Mm-hmm.
The first trailer for the film was released October 13th of 2017. It's been 2.5 fucking years since we got a trailer for this movie. That's insane.
It's crazy.
And a lot has happened, obviously.
Disney's since bought fucking Fox.
Fox is now subsumed within Disney.
Game
like,
of
that's
Thrones
a big
is
deal.
over.
Game of Thrones is over. I mean,
you got that girl now. That girl's 4 years older.
Yeah.
Everybody's 4 years
I saw
older.
someone made a joke. I don't know if it was YouTube or Twitter or something like that. And they're like, wow, the de-aging technology here is incredible.
It's pretty good.
Everyone looks so much younger. It's very true. Yeah, so this is getting a theatrical release. Like, everyone just assumed Disney would dump this shit on Hulu. They'd be like, well, they don't want to not release it because then they're just literally wasting money. But they're paying money to have this shit go out in theaters. April 3rd, 2020. They've set the date for it. It's been delayed 2 to 3 times at least.
So this is the first... Is this the first X-Men movie to be part of the MCU?
No,
Okay.
so it's not.
Okay.
This is the final film in the Fox X-Men franchise.
Okay.
You thought Dark Phoenix was it, and boy howdy was it a real closer for the franchise. But no, the New Mutants is, of all things, going to be the
Dark
last
Phoenix?
thing. Unfortunately, I think we did an episode on it, if I'm not mistaken.
Fuck, that's how forgettable that movie was?
There was a train in it, I think, at one point.
Oh, yeah. Shit, I can't believe I forgot that movie. I completely forgot that movie.
There
I
was
don't know.
there was a Mystique dying in it at one point.
No, don't remember. It was completely gone. It's completely wiped from my memory. I don't know. Don't know what happened.
Yeah.
Hopefully we get more from New Mutants. Hopefully it's more memorable.
There was blonde Jessica Chastain, but she was an alien of some unknown species.
Oh, yeah.
That they just stole from, like, one panel of one comic that had existed in the X-Men franchise history. New
But
Mutants,
is that Psylocke? Is she supposed to be Psylocke, a blonde Psylocke? What is she with her blade?
No. See, these are all characters straight from the comics. She is Magic. I assume you're talking about Anya Taylor-Joy, Split.
Yeah.
She is the younger sister of Colossus. She's a Russian character. She's a mutant. She has the ability to teleport, I think, and she's like a sorceress of some sort. So I think she's got some.
Her name's Magic.
Magic with a K. Magic.
That's
with
cool.
A K.
Okay.
So she's got some cool abilities, which we obviously. I guess the one thing that we really saw that's different in this trailer compared to the first one I think was pretty muted in terms of like powers that we saw, whereas this one seems like it's the first one was just like, look, it's super spooky and shit. And I think there's the spooky elements that we still see in this. They use Pink Floyd again and stuff,
which was terrible. It's not a good trailer.
They don't need no education.
Yeah. Especially with it being creepy. We don't need.
It's what else? Maisie Williams is Wolfsbane, who's basically a werewolf.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Charlie Heaton, Stranger Things, is Cannonball, who can, I think he can jump up in the air, something like that. I don't know exactly what his deal is. And then I don't know exactly what's going on with the other guys. I think Sunspot's one of them. He can do stuff with like solar energy and shit. All comics characters. I think the New Mutants itself, there have been several runs of quote unquote the New Mutants as a comic book, so it's not a wholly original thing. It's an adaptation of something that's existed before. I don't know if it's quite existed in this incarnation with these particular characters and such, but
what are all the oh wait, am I thinking? No, I'm thinking of the wrong movie. Never mind. What are the fucking what are the people with the dropping out of the ceiling and shit? What about that?
I don't know what's going on here.
Okay.
I say that it's based on things, but I've never read those things, so I really don't know a whole lot, in terms of plot elements, kind of what they're doing. Again, it definitely seems like it's still horror tinged, even if it's not outright
Definitely.
horror. I think it's, it's a send-up of horror and superhero genre, which is fun. I think that's a cool melding of things that could be interesting. I think the weird thing that happened with this is that they delayed it multiple times because they were apparently going to reshoot it, like an extensive reshoots. They're going to add a whole new character, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think any of those reshoots ever happened. I think once Disney took over, they're just like, it's fine.
Just get it out.
I don't know. Maybe this is me reading into things too much, but the fact that it's getting a theatrical release almost to me suggests that Disney is okay with it as a film. Like, I don't know if that's being too presumptuous, but like, you'd think for a company that now has tight control over all these things, are probably going to do their own version of the X-Men within a few years and stuff like that. Like, does this create brand confusion? Like, you'd almost think they'd want them to separate this as much as possible and just bury it as much as they could.
That's what I would think.
Unless they just think it's okay, like as a film, like something that's separated enough that works on its own merits, that maybe it's just you dump it. It doesn't make a whole lot of money, sure, but you get enough money back to make it worth your while to even go through the distribution chains. I don't know. I hope it's. I mean, I don't think it looks bad. I don't know if that's a hot take or not. I don't think it looks bad.
Oh no, the trailer's not good, but the movie itself doesn't look bad. I like the cast.
I think it looks totally fun. It looks better than fucking Dark Phoenix. You know.
Definitely looks better than
at least looks probably better than what you remember of the. It
does look better than the Emancipation of Harley Quinn.
It does. It looks better than Birds of Prey. 100%. I agree with that. So, April 3rd, 2020. It's finally happening, unless they delay it again. But anyway, that's New Mutants.
Cool. I have some news for you.
Okay.
News for our peeps on the internets. We got a Lock and Key official trailer, and apparently this is based off of a graphic novel I've never read, I'd never heard of, but I my one source of knowledge from this is the trailer, and I think it looks interesting.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I will add as a slight follow-on. It is in fact, yes, based on a comic book series, but interestingly, that comic book series is written by Joe Hill, who is the son of author Stephen King.
Really?
So, yeah. So that's kind of cool.
That is kind of cool.
And I think there are some King-esque elements that we see here, but I think tonally speaking, this seems to be a bit more kid-friendly, I guess. I don't think it's explicitly for children or anything like that, but it definitely seems to be shifting tones between being kind of like, it seems like it rides the line of like children-friendly horror while also, you know, magic and such. Like, I don't know, it seems to be an interesting, again, meld of genres.
Yeah,
I can't really follow exactly the tone of it, but it you know, there's a lot. Seems like there's a lot fucking going on. Like, just from this, it's a long ass trailer that we got, 3-minute trailer. But there's a lot in it, I think. But
yeah, no,
would you I mean, what's your impression of the trailer?
It looks incredibly interesting. I like the idea of the keys opening different gateways to different places, which is cool. I've done a quick Googs on the Lock and Key, and apparently there's a lot of different keys. They got the Omega key, the Echo key, the Anywhere key, the Gender key, the Ghost key, the Head key, Shadow key, and all these different keys. There's more keys. I don't feel the need to go on about the keys. There's a Jester key, an Angel key, a Hercules key, an Animal key, a Time Shift key, an Alpha key, and a Philosophoscope key. Anyway, and there's more keys in between. Anyways,
okay.
There's all this stuff, and they do different things, and that's cool.
Keys for any purpose, really.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things. Like the Omega key opens the lock on the demonic door, which was the first key created, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And you got these kids, and they're going on these different things. It actually says something about Lovecraft. Welcome to Lovecraft was a 6-issue limited series published by IDW Publishing. Yeah, that's cool. Especially if it's Lovecraftian. I don't think it'll be Lovecraftian, but it might be, and that's cool. But,
yeah.
Does look cool, though. I'm about it. Yeah. The cast looks interesting. They look like they're... it's got that one guy in it. He was from X-Men. Iceman. Iceman's in it.
It's one of the Ashmores. So I'm not sure which one it is, because there's 2 Ashmores that are twins.
Oh,
so
shit.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. I actually don't know if it's if it's the X-Men one. I did see him in there though for a second. So I guess, you know,
I'll watch it.
Yeah,
but I watch everything on Netflix. So
that's true. The one thing that's interesting about this is it's been not really mired in production hell, but it's gone through an interesting production cycle, I guess I'll say. So originally Hulu was going to do this show. They literally filmed the pilot for this, and then I think Hulu passed on it, and then Netflix swooped in and be like, okay, we'll make this show. And they recast everyone except for, I think, the kid. like the younger kid in this, and reshot the pilot, shot the whole fucking series and everything.
Who's the kid? The kid looked really familiar too. The youngest one?
It's little Georgie from It.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, okay. Yeah, totally.
So he was the only one that I guess apparently made the cut from round 1 to round 2. But I don't know, it's just kind of interesting. Like, it's not obvious. A lot of times properties will pass through multiple hands. That's not uncommon, but for them to actually go through the pilot phase, say, nah, we're good, and then for it to kind of go into Netflix's hands. Kind of an interesting thing. The original pilot was directed by Andy Muschietti, who did It, Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. However, I'm gonna try to take this opportunity to embark on a segue of sorts. Andy Muschietti was a late replacement as the director of the pilot. And who would you guess that he replaced as the director of that original pilot for Hulu? None other than Scott Derrickson, a man who I'm about to talk about. Scott Derrickson, whatever you want to call him. Scott Derrickson directed...
Is that why you laughed when I said that earlier?
Scott Derrickson.
You dick. Anyways.
Scott Derrickson... you may recognize as the director of the first Doctor Strange. He did Sinister, a couple other things. And he was set to direct Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, but Trouble in Paradise, that is no longer happening. He has exited the project and what is quote-unquote being considered a mutual agreement to part ways due to creative differences. He is to remain on as executive producer of the film, which usually just means he'll get some big bucks thrown his way. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness has now lost its director. We don't have a replacement for it as of yet. And I kind of feel like this is the first time in, I'd say, a little while where Marvel Studios and companies seem to be butting heads. I think we had a lot of issues early on. Obviously, Edgar Wright dropping out of Ant-Man, that whole saga was a saga. I think Shane Black notoriously had issues with Iron Man 3 in terms of the villain and having to rewrite, and there's always the controversy of, like, should Black Widow get her own toys, because God forbid we make a toy with a girl, that wouldn't sell. Absolutely ridiculous. So, once Kevin Feige got out from under the thumb of big bad Ike Perlmutter, the Trump lover himself, it seemed like things were a little bit more smooth sailing. I guess you've had the saga recently with Sony not wanting to play ball, but that's kind of external. You know what I mean? Of course, a company wants to make more money than they have before. It makes sense. They figure that out, so we're good now, right? But this is an interesting thing. I think an unexpected development, certainly. And for a movie that is set to start production in just a few months, all indications are that things are going forward as planned. There's no changes to what they're doing. They just need to find someone else to kind of shepherd the project into the future. One other thing that I think that has stuck out, I've seen a lot of people talking about this, is that when they announced this film, they kind of announced it would be like the first horror film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And then in recent comments, Feige has kind of backtracked almost on that and saying that it will be horror influenced, but it won't be a quote unquote horror movie. Whereas Scott Derrickson / Dickerson has kind of said differently, and I think that's probably where your creative differences are coming in, is that Derrickson, who's known for making horror movies in the past,
wanted to make a straight horror movie.
Probably wanted it to be a scary film, and Kevin Feige probably balked at that, of just being like, well, it's still gotta kind of toe the company line of, yeah, it's a Marvel movie, and we're fun. It's cool if we play with different genres, but we don't want it to be a genre movie in its own sort of way. You can look at, people always say that Captain America: The Winter Soldier is like a political thriller, and it's like, well, no, it's not. It's a superhero film with elements of political thriller kind of woven into it, right. But it's not a political thriller.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think that's probably what Feige is probably trying to do, is strike more of a balance. And I think, if I had to guess,
hope that, man, I don't want another mediocre Doctor Strange movie, because that's what the first one was. I think it was just a mediocre movie. I want it was Iron Man with some light magic. I feel like the Russos had a little bit more fun with Strange as a character. Like, I feel like the powers that we saw him pull off in the Avengers movies
was like leaps and bounds where we saw Strange as of the end of Doctor Strange, and obviously time had elapsed and stuff like that, but I kind of feel like you can't go back.
No, you can't.
You can't go back to punches
to the wall, dude.
No more punches and kicks from Doctor Strange. Everything's got to be magic. You know what I mean? Like, it's got to be balls to the wall, like just absolute madness happening. And
when you said it was a horror movie, I got
and I think that would have felt like that. So yeah, I hope that I hope that it's probably more just narrative integration that's probably the issue, because I know that like Scarlet Witch is going to be in the film,
and Feige's like number one hero is Doctor Strange, right?
Yeah, he's a huge fan of her. I think he's recently just discussed Wanda as being like the most powerful character in the MCU.
No, I mean, Doctor Strange is one of his favorite characters.
No,
right?
I know. I'm agreeing. I'm just saying that like it's this combination of these two characters where it's one of his favorite characters. You know, it's his baby in his own sort of way, right, combined with a character whose power levels are perhaps unlimited. Right. Like, you should expect fucking absolute bonkers things to happen in this film. It's called Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, for fuck's sake. So, like, it should not be in anything, and it should not in any way, shape, or form really resemble the first movie, with the exception of having returning cast. Like, that's my feelings on it. Is like, you got your origin story out of the way. Stephen Strange is now Doctor Strange. We've seen what he can do. We need to see more of that. We need to see new things. We need to see different things. We need to see new villains, new threats, and stuff like that. Yeah. Like, I think this needs to expand the world and the universe in a really, really sort of radical way. And so hopefully, regardless of whether that was where the creative differences came in, I hope that we still see a form of that, you know, when this does eventually come to theaters. Again, it's not the first time Marvel's butt heads with anyone, but it is the first time in recent memory, and so it's a little bit worrying from that standpoint.
It is. I mean, we saw what happened with Lucasfilm and Solo.
Yeah, and you know,
Solo
it's tough.
Came out, it was mediocre. It was fine,
and it could have been better than what it was under Lord Miller. You know, you just have, there's no way to know. You know, Justice League, obviously not Marvel or Disney, but like, you know, people clamoring for the fucking Snyder cut like it's, you know, God's gift to Earth, and it's just like, no, honestly, it's either just as bad or worse. You know what I mean? And I think there's two sides to every story. We don't know the sides here. We can only speculate. We can only speculate to say that Lord Miller would have made a better version of Solo if they let themselves go and Lucasfilm hadn't intervened. Or maybe they would have made dog shit. Who's to say? Who's to
say? I just know, just creatively, it seems hard to pick up on one person's project, you know?
Yeah, and that may be true, but, you know, I don't know that... I don't know. You know, it's just hard to say.
You just have to have faith in Feige.
Not knowing all the pieces.
Trust, you know?
Feige has rarely led us astray, so...
And Feige we trust.
If this goes down to, you know, it being a conflict with him, you know, Feige having his vision for it, I honestly will trust Feige's vision. You know, I don't think Derrickson is such a magnificently talented director that losing out on him is such a huge loss. No. You know? But I think this is different, you know, for sake of argument, than losing James Gunn for Guardians 3. When that happened, obviously it's, you know, they backtrack now, but, you know, that to me felt like a big fucking blow. Like, a Guardians 3 without James Gunn felt just wrong to its core.
That's very tough, right?
And this, to me, feels like...
Dickerson just made a fucking Iron Man. It just made a total...
You know, and it's a fine movie, and I think that he's talented. It's
totally mediocre.
And I think he's very passionate about the character and stuff like that, but I think there's still a way that you come out on the other side of this with a really, really fantastic Doctor Strange 2 that ups the ante a lot. That's, you know... Obviously, you don't want pre-production drama, but at least it's happening before they start rolling cameras and stuff like that. There's still time to make this movie work, for sure. And maybe it works better without him. Maybe it doesn't. We will obviously never know. Again, it's going to be the Edgar Wright saga all over again. Although I would argue Edgar Wright, much more talented filmmaker than Scott Derrickson, from what I've seen from either of their output. So, you know, just purely in terms of like creativity and stuff like that. Like, Derrickson's known for his horror stuff, and that's cool, and I think that's a really cool influence for Doctor Strange, but Edgar Wright is like... Edgar Wright rarely puts out a project that I am disappointed with, which is to say I don't think it's ever happened. So, yeah, I don't know. kind
see what happens.
It's kind of some word salad for you on Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, but nonetheless, it should be making its release date, barring any setbacks, May 7th, 2021. So there you have it. One last piece of news, if I'm not mistaken.
And it's Star Wars related, my friend.
Oh, saving some Star Wars content for last. I see your angle.
At long last, we have some Dave Filoni action. Surely Dave Filoni is related with this project. Filoni. I'm gonna say that he probably is.
He is indeed.
We got Star Wars: The Clone Wars. At long last, we get season 7.
Season 7. 12 new episodes coming to Disney Plus. When? When would they be coming to Disney Plus?
In February.
February 17th, to be precise.
Nice. So I will be watching the show day one. Hopefully they dump all the episodes at once, because I will.
I was trying to find information on that, and I'm assuming they're doing a once a week episode.
Yeah, fuck them
thing.
Fuck
Disney Plus. Disney. I don't think Disney Plus has dumped anything.
They haven't.
So I feel like they won't change that here, but I hope that they do.
Dump it. Let us watch it quick.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool that we're getting more Clone Wars, obviously, years and years after it initially ended.
Did you ever finish it?
No, I have not finished it, but I have a month plus to finish it, so I can roll right into this.
Nice. Okay.
So yeah, I think I'm pretty close. I think I have maybe a season and a half. I came pretty close. I have to go back and do research and figure out like where I ended. The nice thing about Clone Wars is for the most part, you just jump right in.
Right.
Because most of the, even if it's not a standalone episode, it's usually a standalone arc of 3 or 4 episodes, and you can kind of, I can just kind of figure out where I finished up, and I think I can jump right in without really any sort of
fluff. They just offer nothing more than lore, which is totally cool.
And they're cool, they're fun, a nice way to revisit the characters. Honestly, the Clone Wars in its entirety is better than the prequel trilogy in its entirety.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
no doubt.
It's kind of the most well-realized version of the world at the time of the prequels and stuff. So, I'm excited to see more.
Is there
definitely
any
some
sort of footage
heavy
related to
Dave
this?
Filoni
We have a trailer or anything like that?
They put out a trailer for this at I think Celebration last year. So I think there was some stuff with Anakin and just kind of we've seen footage on it. We've talked about it. I don't recall. To be honest.
I want to see some more Ahsoka, dude. Ahsoka's so cool.
Well, I'm looking at an article that literally has a blurb saying Ahsoka will return in the new season. So there you go.
Yeah. Awesome.
Question answered. Yeah, I mean, it would make sense that she would obviously be coming back. So, yeah, 12 new episodes, February 17th on Disney Plus. That'll be very cool. Excited to see that. I'm excited to go back and finish it. I enjoyed it. I think for anyone that hasn't
Rebels
watched
yet, though, right?
I have not started Rebels, but my thought process is probably I don't want to start Rebels until I finish what had already aired of Clone Wars, of course, because of certain storylines that are connected. But I kind of just feel like once I finish Clone Wars, and especially if this is going to be a week-to-week thing, of course I'll just fill that time with Rebels, right? That seems like the way to do it. It's all on Disney Plus, so it's super easy to watch now.
Mm-hmm. Very accessible.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of my plan.
All right, man. Well, I'm excited for Clone Wars. I'll watch season 7 on February 14th or whatever the fuck.
I think I said 17th. I'm not sure what day of the week that is. Let's find out. Quick research suggests that is a Monday.
Nice.
So cool. Very cool. All right, that's the last of the news, is it not?
That is last of the news. Rise of the Skywalker is upon us.
Yes.
Yes.
Good. We shall talk about the Rise of Skywalker.
Mistaken about a great many things.
Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, the long-awaited conclusion to the Skywalker Saga, was written by J.J. Abrams and Batman v Superman's Chris Terrio, directed by J.J. Abrams. You got a long list of cast members, a lot of talented folks coming back, reprising their roles. Some new folks joining the crew as well. Carrie Fisher in her final film performance, Mark Hamill, Adam Driver, Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, Oscar Isaac, your boy Oscar Isaac, Anthony Daniels, Naomi Ackie, Doomhall, Donald Gleason, Richard E. Grant, Lupita Nyong'o, Kerry Russell, Eunice Suotamo, Kelly Marie Tran, Ian McDiarmid, and
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Coming back, Billy D. Williams.
Woo-hoo.
Billy D. motherfucking Williams. He's back. The surviving members of the Resistance face the First Order once again, and the legendary conflict between the Jedi and the Sith reaches its peak, bringing the Skywalker Saga to its end. How about that? You want to talk some box office numbers, my friend? Box office breakdown. It's a Star Wars movie. It did well. It's fair to say. But not as well as I think people probably ordinarily would have expected it to. It's probably worth mentioning, if we haven't talked about it in episodes past, this movie didn't get very good reviews. It's not to say that it got bad reviews, but it got very mixed reviews, shall we say. Hanging out in the 50s, I believe, on Rotten Tomatoes at last count.
Which is fucking terrible. Even as polarized as the Last Jedi. Last Jedi scored out. What?
The Last Jedi was polarized in a different way. Critics loved The Last Jedi. Fans were mixed,
did not,
shall we say.
Or mixed. It was polarized as far as fans went, right?
I think the polarization was in terms of fans. Critics were pretty aligned on The Last Jedi. I think there was a few dissenters, but I think overall people really liked The Last Jedi. Critics really liked The Force Awakens. I think fans really liked The Force Awakens with again, a few dissenters. But this has been kind of... I think it's been polarizing on both fronts. Critics were mixed, and I think fans have been mixed as well. Cinema Score, which is a usually pretty reliable metric of kind of your general audience take on it, scored out at a B+, which on a traditional scale of grading is good, but on an overinflated scale that the Cinema Score rolls on, it's actually the worst score that any Star Wars film has ever received from Cinema Score. And it's based on like audience polling. So it's not them just pulling it out of their ass. I mean, it's obviously
you like it or you don't like it,
randomized. Yeah, you know, it is what it is. You can call it a bullshit metric or whatever, but it's usually been pretty reliable in terms of tracking legs for box office performance. That's kind of one of its biggest things.
Okay.
Certain things score differently. Like horror films always do horrible on Cinema Score, they're kind of outliers. But like action movies, stuff like this, usually pretty reliable. And I think like, you know, Batman v Superman got like a B+, just to bring it up again and stuff, you know, stuff like that. Or maybe it got a B, but like usually that's kind of just been like a, ooh, buddy. And like Batman v Superman had horrendous legs. Great opening weekend, dropped like a fucking rock, you know, moving forward.
I feel like this has dropped like a rock. I feel like it's dropped pretty quick.
I don't know that it's dropped quite like a rock, but it's dropped precipitously. It started with, so let's just talk numbers for now. $177.3 million is an opening weekend, which was good for number one, of course. And look, a movie that makes $200 million or nearly $200 million in its opening weekend, it's doing fine. It's a movie that cost a lot of money to make. I'm sure it was $250 to $300 million in terms of budget, but it's doing fine. Right. Domestically, it's doing well. The thing is, it's a drop-off from its predecessors. It's the third highest opening film in December, behind number 2, The Last Jedi, and number 1, The Force Awakens.
Right.
and I think the thing is, you know, people expected The Force Awakens fucking blew, you know, it's the highest grossing film domestically ever. Still is. I don't think anyone ever expected The Last Jedi to match The Force Awakens. There was a drop off that was reasonably expected, but I think people thought that I would have thought that this would have rallied in the way that Avengers Endgame broke all those records as like the conclusion to what had been built for 20 movies. Look, there's not 20 Star Wars movies, right? But like
there's 9.
The end of the trilogy, the capper to the Skywalker Saga as they've marketed it. I think people expected more. And so I'm not going to say that it's doing poorly, but I will say that I think this is probably lower than expectations. Disney will turn a profit from this film. There's no doubt about that. Purely in terms of box office, they will. In terms of merchandising.
Yeah,
of course, billions of dollars right there.
They've already made the money.
But I think people did expect more overall. Rest of the numbers came in at $374 million in its opening weekend worldwide. And I think that you can already see the problem a little bit. Star Wars it's not as popular elsewhere. It does well in Europe, and this one did well in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
But your big box office markets that you really need to become the Avengers level success, Star Wars just doesn't capture that. China does not give a flying fuck about Star Wars. It's as simple as that. This movie, I think, in its entire run will make less than what The Last Jedi made in its opening weekend in China, which was already significantly less than what The Force Awakens made in China. So it's like China is just done. China's done with fucking Star Wars.
That's a lot of fucking
They're like, we
people,
gave you fucking like 3 movies. Like, now you can fuck right off. Is basically what China is saying.
That's a huge market too,
and that's a huge market to lose out on. That's a hundreds of millions of dollars that you're losing out on that you'd get from an Avengers type movie. I don't know what it is. China didn't have Star Wars, I think, basically until Force Awakens, and clearly it was late to the party, I guess, or something like that. But even just the rest of Asia, it's the same thing. Japan doesn't really have any sort of real affinity for Star Wars. There's just not enough, You need all those markets to play together, to buoy together, to create the sort of massive success that you had with The Force Awakens. And I think because that was the first Star Wars you had in a long time, even the markets that didn't care about Star Wars still turned their heads at it.
Right.
And now that they've seen it for a couple movies in a row, they're like, yeah, we get it. We're good. And I think that's kind of you get a tepid reaction, I think, and that's kind of what's happened here. So in terms of totals, it's sitting right now at $478.1 million domestically. The Last Jedi, for reference, made, I think, over $600 million domestically. This may cross that, but I think its legs are dying off. It's already lost in its 4th weekend to 1917, got crushed, in fact. It's just not holding. It's just not holding very well. It did well through the holidays, through Christmas and stuff like that, but now that kids are back in school and such, it'll do fine. But I it's not having those crazy holds in the way that Force Awakens did. And it started lower, so it's just going to end lower. I think that's just kind of how it's going to go.
That's right.
It will cross $1 billion worldwide, of course. I think if it didn't, that would be staggering. But it is $11 million away from crossing that at the worldwide threshold, $989.5 million as of recording this. So it'll cross $1 billion. It'll cross $1 billion comfortably. There's still a lot of time for this film to play, and it's a Star Wars film. People will continue to see it multiple times. New people will go in and check it out. This movie will do just fine. Disney's doing just fine. But I think as what is billed as this massive conclusion, I think Disney has to be left a little wanting with kind of what they've got on their hands. But it did better than Solo. So there you go.
There you go. Silver lining.
And so now we should talk about the Rise of Skywalker.
Let's talk about it.
We will, I think we're going to treat it, we're going to obviously do non-spoilers. We'll do recommendation, we'll do spoilers and stuff like that, but we're just going to kind of jump around. I know with The Last Jedi we did kind of a structured approach to it, but I don't know that's necessary here. I think, there's a lot to talk about. I think there's a lot that we're both going to want to say. There's a lot I want to say, I guess I should say. I don't want to speak for you necessarily, but I'm excited to have this conversation.
Yeah,
a couple of weeks later, we've talked about it off air. It's not.
We have.
I mostly know how you feel about it,
though. We haven't,
but it has been some time,
right.
And
you've seen it an additional time. You've seen it 3 times. I've seen it twice.
Correct. We saw 2 times together. We saw it opening night in IMAX together, and then we saw it in Dolby the second time around. Dolby Cinema. I saw it in Dolby again for my 3rd time because 1917 was taking over the Dolbys, so I wanted to make sure I got in one last premium format viewing.
How was it up there? How was it up there? The Dolby.
It's
same. Was I? Were we right in how Dolby has like a firm grip on the QC of their theater experiences?
Yeah, I think Dolby is. I think the thing is with Dolby Cinema, and this is just an aside. This is not Star Wars related particularly. Dolby Cinema, I think, is consistent anywhere you go, in that they've got a pretty tight grip.
Unlike IMAX, right?
unlike IMAX. I think that was the exact point I was going to make, is that you can go to any Dolby. I think that the only difference that I've noticed when we saw it in Dolby, there was a lot more fucking seats than I'm accustomed to for a Dolby. Like, a lot of the Dolbys I've gone to have been pretty smaller auditoriums, but the audio-visual experience has been identical.
Mm-hmm.
The Dolby we went to, we were sitting pretty far back.
Right.
And I didn't realize they made Dolby cinemas that big. I honestly think it's too big for what the format is. It's not an IMAX. I think an IMAX could get away with that setup. So the Dolby I went to the third time around was a smaller auditorium, so I sat closer to the screen, which I think I enjoyed more.
Sure.
I wasn't sitting on the front row or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
But you know, it was kind of right in the middle. It was kind of like the
More
ideal
immersive,
thing.
right.
I had some jackasses off to my right talking for half the movie, which it's the third time I'd seen it, so I guess I'm slightly more forgiving, but they were fucking annoying as shit. They eventually stopped with some prompting.
Somebody prompted them to stop? Or was it you?
Yeah. It might have been Anna to my right.
Anna told him shut the fuck up?
She told him, well, she was a little bit more courteous than that, but they were literally just having conversations. And it's just like, this is a full theater. Like, you're not the only ones in here. Like, it's not like there was 5 people in it, and no, the whole row was pretty booked up. So anyway, not the point, but it was an interesting experience. It was like a Tuesday night or something like that. But like,
that's hilarious.
You paid fucking $20 for those tickets. You know, like Dolby ain't cheap.
No,
for what it is, it ain't cheap.
Don't be an asshole.
I don't know. I always just get, you know, I don't know. I question humanity a lot.
It irks me. It does irk me too. Right.
Yes. Long story short, I've seen it 3 times. You've seen it twice. It's been more recent for me. My third time was within the past week, so it's more recent in my memory. I think the second time we saw it was still pre-Christmas, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. Yeah.
But I'm sure you remember a few things about this movie.
It's pretty memorable. It's a memorable movie. It's not Dark Phoenix.
That's a fine compliment. All right, so let me hand it over to you, sir. We're talking non-spoilers. We're talking Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. Offer me your hot takes. Cold takes. What you got?
The biggest hot take of this movie is, I think in a nutshell, this movie, in and of itself, is a fine movie. It's a fast-paced movie. It doesn't dwell too long on any one particular moment. There's not a lot in there's not a lot in I've lost my word. There's not a lot in the means of like sentimentalness or sentimentality. I don't know if that's a word. But it doesn't dwell on any one particular moment too long. And I think it suffers for that. It doesn't, there's not a lot of emotional, it doesn't allow for a lot of emotional responses to the content that in the movie, and to the content that should have you should have emotional responses to. It's one moment, next moment. I mean, it's breakneck speeds. Now, it's covering a lot of ground, and this is another detriment, I think. It doesn't pay a lot of homage to the Last Jedi, which I think it suffers from. And not a lot's acknowledged. I mean, yes, it's acknowledged, but it's the things that it wanted to acknowledge. It acknowledges, like, it just brushes it under the rug. It touches it and pushes it under the rug, and that's it. And then we move on to the next thing. So it, as a trilogy piece, I feel like it's rough. As a movie in and of itself, I think it's totally fine. It leaves you wanting. It left me wanting more. I would like to be a little bit more emotional about Star Wars. The Force Awakens was super emotional. It's still super emotional,
and it still is.
Right.
We talked about it.
But this one, I don't have anything there for this one. And that's a shame. I wish there was more there. But what it did have, I think it did an okay job of. I think it did a good job. I mean, I like Palpatine as a villain. But not to get too spoiler in the non-spoiler section. So I would just say that, of course, the music's great. Cinematography is fucking cool. The spectacle is fucking cool. I mean, it's still Star Wars. And Star Wars will always be, even if you're talking about the prequels, right? There's still spectacle. There's still cool shit. There's always cool shit. It's Star Wars. So yeah, it looks cool. It sounds cool. There's cool stuff in it. It's fun. It doesn't, as a sequel piece, it sucks because it just doesn't acknowledge the pieces before it, which I think is it's a huge detriment. I think it's not as tight paced as a part of the trilogy or a part of the continuum as a whole. I think there's missed opportunities. I think the movie could. You don't hear me say this long. Usually, I would say movies would benefit for being shorter. I think this movie would benefit for being probably a good 15 minutes, 20 minutes longer. I think there's more meat on this bone that you could have got.
And I think the footage is out there. It feels cut down. Like they were trying to tighten it, but
and they tightened it too much. They trimmed too much off.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, like I said, I think that this would benefit from being a good chunk longer.
And if you're gonna make a fucking capper to a trilogy, saga, whatever you're going to call it,
let it be a long one.
Avengers just did it in 3 hours. It's like the one circumstance in which I think you're allowed to get a little bit more unwieldy in terms of length. If
say
it's in
what
service
you need
of
to
the
say,
film itself.
and take your time in saying it, because there's not going to be another opportunity to say it. So say it and get it. Take your time. So like I said, I think it could have been longer. There's things that I would change, but I mean this is what we have, and so it's totally fine. And I would say that this Star Wars movie is totally fine. It's not my favorite Star Wars movie, but it's by far not the worst. And there is definitely cool shit in it, which is cool, So I don't know. That's my take on the non-spoiler section.
I have a very similar take overall. So a lot of what I'm going to say is probably just going to be echoing a lot of what you've just said. Totally fine. You kind of took the words out of my mouth. I think it's fine. Ultimately that's disappointing because you don't want to settle for just fine. I've kind of reconciled, I guess, in the sense that I've seen it a few times now. Obviously, I don't hate this film. If I hated this film, I wouldn't have watched it 3 times. It's as simple as that. I'm not about that sort of shit. I think there's a lot to enjoy in this film, but I think what's most enjoyable about this film is it ties into what you've talked about. This film works best in a vacuum as its own entity. It fails for me not only as a capper to the sequel trilogy,
but as a whole.
It fails for me as a conclusion to the Skywalker Saga.
Right.
And honestly, it didn't need to be. It didn't need to be a conclusion to the Skywalker Saga. The prequel trilogy had its own conclusion. The original trilogy had its own conclusion. The sequel trilogy deserved its own conclusion. You could have, each third can stand on its own and should stand on its own. And I think the problem here is that by virtue of trying to make it so connected to everything else by basically, in effect, bringing in the villain of the first 6 films, it doesn't line up with 7 and 8. I think it's closer to 7 for sure. And obviously J.J. Abrams is the director of both. You can feel that, co-wrote this one, co-wrote the 7 as well. But
there's a really good movie in between that got no acknowledgement whatsoever.
There's no cohesion. 7 to 9 I think would work fine. You could totally skip The Last Jedi and it probably makes just as much sense. Arguably it makes more sense in its weird sort of way. And that I think that's a crying shame because we've talked about The Last Jedi being polarizing, but we talked about The Last Jedi in the Skywalker Saga episode that we just put out. I love The Last Jedi. I think it does a lot of super interesting things for Star Wars as a franchise in terms of lore, in terms of characterization, and I think that this film fundamentally either doesn't understand The Last Jedi, or if it does, it doesn't like The Last Jedi, and it chooses to just ignore the things that I think were interesting, that the pieces that it put on the board. I think the way that they handled those are incredibly disappointing for me. And it was exacerbated at least the first time around when I had watched the back half of The Force Awakens. Then I immediately watched The Last Jedi afterwards. And then within 2 hours, I watched this film, and I'm like,
what?
There's no connectivity here, and it's frustrating as an experience. And I think at least I talked about it, if I recall correctly, on the Skywalker Saga episode. Return of the Jedi is kind of similar.
It is.
There's a lot of ass pull compared to A New Hope and Empire. Luke and Leia being siblings is totally fucking left field and totally fucking weird. And clearly was not all that well thought out until the Return of the Jedi just decided, let's just do it. The one woman that he's met in the galaxy, fuck it, they're related. You know what I mean? It's lazy, and it's a little bit like, okay, and like what's the big threat that we can come up with? Why don't we just do the Death Star again?
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like the Return of the Jedi, as much as I think it sticks the landing by the end, it's got its faults. And I think that this film's kind of similar in the sense that it wanted to reach certain points in terms of storytelling, and that's all well and good. But 7 and 8 don't really build towards the storytelling points I think this film tried to achieve.
Right, no, there's no acknowledgement.
And I think that if you just look at this movie in and of itself, it's fine. The movie starts by, bringing back a certain someone, and the film deals with that. And it's fine, and it works, and it's okay.
You just have to ignore 9 movies before
7 and 8 were not building to this movie.
No.
In any sort of real meaningful way. It's got characters that come back. Rey's back. Finn's back. Poe's back. You know what I mean? Like, Kylo Ren's back. They're back. But I just don't think that there's no progression. There's no natural progression in these movies. I think 7 and 8 was a natural progression. Rian Johnson, people want to shit on Rian Johnson all they want. He's fucking laughing it to the bank with Knives Out, crushing it critically and commercially. Rian Johnson responded to 7.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Luke has been in exile for years. Well, why the fuck has Luke been exiled and for, Luke been, fucking off for years? He answered that question. You may not like that answer. You may not like Luke sucking some milk out of the, the little monster thing's teats. You know what I mean? But I think, in terms of the macro progression of the plot.
Yeah, and it was better.
The story made sense.
Right.
You know what I mean? Rey sought answers for who her parents were, and she got answers. They were difficult answers. They were challenging answers. Kylo Ren had to grapple with the fact that, oh shit, I killed my father. What do I do now? He struggles to kill Leia. He struggles to kill his mom. Clearly, there's still conflict within him, but he almost resolves his own conflict. He kills Snoke and takes charge of the First Order by the end of the film. There's your big bad. This film just doesn't seem too concerned with playing with those elements, and I think
it just sweeps all that shit.
It sweeps it under the rug.
It just sweeps it fucking under the rug. Like, the 3 hours of that movie did not happen, and it's almost insulting because that was a good long movie, and now you don't want to acknowledge anything I just did.
I just I'll take a step back in a second and just say, I don't want to criticize this movie too much for what it should have been or what it could have been. I will, again, as you kind of said, I will take this movie for what it is. But I just think there's a version. I think there's a version of this movie more or less close enough to what it is that still takes what worked, takes what happened, and acknowledges it and builds on it, or at least does some sort of throwaway line to be like, yeah, remember that thing happened? Well, fuck that. That's not the truth anymore. We fixed that. There's ways to build this movie up to be kind of the movie that it is, that still doesn't feel like it's just outright ignoring aspects of the last film. But I think again, on its own merits, just looking at it at face value for what this film is, what it stands on, what the story that it tries to tell on its own, it's still not amazing. I think it's better. It's better when you excise it from the whole, which is a detractor, I think, overall. But
it's still just
there's good in here. There's still cool in here. There's still good in here. There's a lot to like within this film. It's just a little bit frustrating when you think that this could have been more. It could have been more in and of itself. It could have been more as the conclusion to the Skywalker Saga. But I will talk about what I liked about this film, because I've probably been kind of negative Nancy for most of what I've said. J.J. Abrams knows how to shoot a fucking film.
Yeah, he does.
It's a very well shot film. It's an enjoyable film. I think if nothing else, it plays well as a popcorn piece. I think Star Wars has the potential to be more than that. I think this is probably... I think for the casual fan, this is probably a more enjoyable film than The Last Jedi is. I think The Last Jedi is more concerned with the characterization in general. This is more concerned with what's cool. Like, this is the rule of cool movie of...
Yeah.
Let's bring back this villain because that's cool. Let's have this sequence where this happens because that's cool. Let's have, there's a lot of that in this film. I don't know if I'm, being too critical of it, but I just... There's just not enough here to really compel me. And I guess kind of what you're saying is, even The Force Awakens was a simple story told with kind of a new lens, new characters.
It was the same story.
And you felt for those characters, even though you knew how the fucking story was going to play out. You still feel for those characters, even though you've seen the movie now, double digits times or whatever like that. This movie, I don't think is... I felt more emotional about certain things in this movie the second time through, because it was less about me just responding to the, oh fuck, this happened, and kind of trying to live with the movie as it is. But there's still not enough resonance there, I think, overall.
No, first time the skull... I don't know.
Pacing is a fatal flaw for this movie.
Pacing is a big... pacing's a big problem with this one.
It's too snappy for its own good. It's nice that it wants to cover a lot of ground. I don't mind that. But this movie does not breathe at any point in its runtime. It's 2.5 hour runtime. It's long. It could have used those 15 minutes to breathe. And it's weird. It's counterintuitive to say that you should add more to make it flow better, but
it needs more time.
I think it would.
Yeah. Every set piece could use an additional 10 minutes.
You can't. It's just set pieces. That's what it is. You don't get an opportunity to sit with these characters and react with them. Even when there is big plot revelations, as dumb as they may be, as silly as they may be, there's still opportunities.
If you had 10 minutes to explain the shit.
There's still opportunities to make those work by letting you feel with the character, but you don't, because the characters just react, and they continue to react throughout the film. It's a reactionary film. It's not one that's methodical. It's not one that lets you sit with. It's concerned with the next thing. We got to do the next thing. We got to do the next thing. We got to do the next thing. And there's a better movie, I think, literally within what's shot. I think that's true. I think there's cuts, there's elements you can make, there's things you could add, you could flesh things out, probably of existing footage that make this a little bit tighter experience or better experience, right, etc. There's definitely a better version of this film in terms of the skeleton of it, in terms of what could have been done to work with the script beforehand to make it, I think, a better experience. But again, we got what we got. I can harp on that all night. I won't try it. I will probably, but I will try to avoid that as much as I can moving forward. So treating it again as what it is, I said I was going to talk about good, and then I started talking about the bad again. The visuals are on point. I enjoy that a lot. Even if it is the rule of cool to the upteenth degree, it looks great.
It's still fucking cool.
I really it's still cool. There's a lot of cool shit in this movie. A lot of enjoyable shit in this movie. John Williams' score is excellent. It's quintessential Star Wars. It feels Star Wars. Yeah. It still feels like a Star Wars movie. The sound design is excellent. I love the sound design in this film. I think the cast is pretty excellent for the most part. I don't think there's anyone that's bad in this per se. I just think I'll talk about it more in spoilers, but if I remember to anyway. It's tough, You can tell that like Carrie Fisher's stuff is recycled from a previous film and built around that. She's good for what she's doing, but she's not really reacting to the moments because
it's not her.
She wasn't filming. She wasn't filming those moments.
Not her fault.
Right, exactly. But what you do get from, I think, most of the cast is you get Adam Driver continuing to excel, may probably be the best performer in the sequel trilogy. I think that's not a hot take. I think for me personally, I think Kylo Ren is one of the most interesting characters. We'll talk about kind of what they do with his role in this film and whether that makes that better or worse for me personally. Daisy Ridley, of course, I'm a huge Daisy Ridley fan. I'm a huge Rey fan. I think that she's great. I think she gets a lot of plot elements to tackle, that Daisy gets to tackle, through Rey, through her performance as Rey. I think she does a great job with it. Boyega, Fenn's, kind of more back to hanging out with Rey and Poe, and Rose is very heavily sidelined in this film.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say I'm surprised she's top billed. How is she?
Well, she's like fucking 19th down on the list, but like I think the performers are good. Even Kelly Marie Tran, who's in this movie for all of 2 fucking minutes, is good for what role she's given.
2 minutes is a compliment. She was in there for fucking 30 seconds.
Okay, 30 seconds. I like things about it. I like the performances in it. I think the cast continues to be good, and I think that's one of the strengths. It's nice to see Billy D. Williams back. It's fucking Lando's back in Star Wars. It's cool.
Yeah.
Of course we saw him in Solo as the younger version, but to see the man come back himself, it's cool to see that. The new characters I thought were mostly pretty cool. We'll talk about them in spoilers, I think, probably more so. But there's cool stuff in here. There's not... there's new locations. We see some cool new locations. We see some cool new things. We see new lore be introduced and stuff like that. There's cool stuff in this. New force powers, sort of. It's cool. There's a lot of cool stuff in here. There's a lot of stuff that I like about it. But there's a lot of dumb. It's kind of wrapped up in a lot of dumb, a lot of maybe unnecessary, at least in my opinion.
There's a lot of dumb.
But...
there's some dumb that starts off in the previous movie, too, though. They do acknowledge some dumb, and then they run with the dumb. So, I mean...
It's as you said, it's totally fine. I've seen... Look, I think maybe... I've talked about this. I'm not sure if I've talked with you, but I've talked about it with others. There's been bad movies in Star Wars before. We've talked about it. We talked about it recently.
Yeah, definitely.
This is not the first time that Star Wars has disappointed. If you want to, argue that it's a disappointment, I think it is overall. But there's worse. There's worse films in the franchise
for sure.
We'll do a full rankings, I think, by the end of the episode. This is not the worst film in Star Wars,
but not by.
It's not the best by a long shot either. But I'm almost. It's maybe it's a bad take, but I'm almost more forgiving of it because I'm just like, you know what? I've seen worse in Star Wars, and I still enjoy that in some capacity. And even though that I want this to be more, I think it should be more. I think it could have been more. I'll enjoy what I can enjoy from this film.
If nothing, thing is, at the end of the day, it's still an okay movie.
Exactly. I think it works.
It might not be the best Star Wars movie, or it's certainly not the worst Star Wars movie. It might be a disappointment Star Wars movie, but at the end of the day, it's not an outright terrible film.
And I'll tell you this, and I hate to bring up old wounds. It's not Game of Thrones.
No,
you know what I mean?
No, definitely not.
Right. In a way that the Game of Thrones last season for me, in a weird sort of way, almost retroactively ruins a lot of the series. I.e., if I never watched the entirety of Game of Thrones again in my life, I would be fine.
I don't think you will.
I will watch Star Wars again. I will watch this movie again. I will watch the prequels again. I will, this hasn't killed Star Wars for me. I have grievances. Yeah. I had grievances with there's good movies. There's even in the good within Star Wars, I still find grievances here and there. Less grievances than I find here. Yeah. But this has not killed my passion for Star Wars in the way that for some reason The Last Jedi seemed to do for some people, and maybe this film will do for others. It's possible. But I see Star Wars. This is quintessential Star Wars. There's a lot of Star Wars in it. It feels like Star Wars. And even though I'm disappointed with how they handled certain characters or how they resolved certain arcs and plots and stuff like that, you know what? It's fucking Star Wars and I enjoyed it. And maybe that's a cop-out. I don't know. Maybe it's a fucking cop-out to just be like, it's Star Wars.
No,
you
it's
know
not,
what I mean?
It's not a cop-out, though. I mean, I feel, if anything, you're copping out at it being a okay movie. Your movie criticisms are holding it together over your Star Wars love. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But, yeah, I think so. But my point is, the Clone Wars comes out in a month. I'm not swearing off Star Wars because I didn't love everything in this fucking movie. You know what I mean? Like, I still love Star Wars. It's okay to like things within Star Wars more than others. Like, I've watched this and I'm like, shit, I still kind of want to play that fucking video game that came out. You know what I mean? Like,
pretty fucking cool, I will tell you.
Like, there's shit like that. Like, where I'm just like, I still love this lore. I love this world. I love the galaxy, far, far away. I still love Star Wars. I wish there was a more satisfying conclusion that we got here, but we got what we got. I will enjoy what I can enjoy out of it. I will bitch until the end of time about things that I don't like about it.
That's my
okay.
prerogative. It's part of
you know what
fandom,
I mean?
Dude.
I'm happy to engage in conversations about Star Wars, and someone may love this fucking film and may find it to be their favorite Star Wars film ever. I'm not going to agree with them, but I'm not going to fucking fight them. I
have a hard time with people that just say, I after this or after that, I just quit watching them. I stopped it.
Yeah, I guess I don't really get that, but again, Game of Thrones, I guess, is the counterexample of, well, maybe. Maybe you could have that extreme
even
reaction.
though I'm not excited about a prequel fucking Game of Thrones, I still like Game of Thrones enough to fucking...
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll read fucking Winds of Winter when it comes out in 60 years,
I'll fucking watch it.
When it's...
Or I'll
when it's
read
written
it.
by robot George R.R. Martin.
His head, it's like straight up Futurama. His head's in the fucking jar.
yeah. So, do you have any other non-spoiler thoughts?
No, that's it, man. That's it. It's a movie.
Move into recommendation. What's your recommendation for the fine folks at home?
This is how I recommend this movie. It's not the best. It's not the best movie. It's not. Yeah, it's certainly not the best movie. It's not the best Star Wars movie. But I tell you what, it does have. It does have a lot of fucking spectacle. And it's got a lot of spectacle that benefits from a big-ass screen and a lot of sound. So I would say...
Sound is paramount.
Sound is paramount. I saw it in a shitty IMAX. We saw it in a shitty IMAX. And then we saw it in a Dolby. If you can see it in a good IMAX, I imagine a real good IMAX is better than a Dolby. But you can't... Those are few and far between. So I would say if you have a LIMAX... see it in the Dolby instead, because you're the only one that can talk about it. I mean, I can talk about it. I didn't see this movie in multiple Dolbys, but I've seen movies in. I've been to multiple Dolbys, and the experience is very much similar, as opposed to IMAXs, where there's difference in screen size.
Wild differences.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I would say if you can see it in a Dolby, see it in Dolby unless you have a bomb-ass IMAX. And you'll know a bomb-ass IMAX when you're in a bomb-ass IMAX.
Well, just a point of note, I guess, unfortunately, just since we're recording week's end, I think you might be shit out of luck for seeing this in Dolby, because I think 1917 has taken over. But it is, at least locally, it's playing in IMAX still near me. So
okay,
I think I think 1917 does have certain IMAX screens, but evidently not all of them. Maybe there's just AMC contracts or something weird going on. But I think IMAX may be your only option if you want a premium format at this current juncture. But I mean, odds are, let's be
honest,
you've probably seen this already. To be honest, it's Star Wars. It's making money. People see Star Wars. But in case you haven't, obviously, yeah. I mean, premium screen, if you can find it in any format, it's going to be better. You know what I mean? Typically, even a shitty IMAX is still a cut above your theater. Typically, with exceptions. But
I have yet to have an experience where an IMAX was worse than a standard theater, worse than the Zephyr Cinema. I don't.
Well, at least in terms of price, anyway.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, fine. There's a value proposition, but yeah, large format, it benefits from the sound and the screen. So.
Okay. I will... Maybe this is also a cop-out. I think purely for the film itself, in terms of as an experience, it's worth seeing in theaters. I think in terms of quality, it's probably a little bit less than that. So I guess I'll kind of cabin my recommendation and say that, I mean, if you care about Star Wars, if you've seen a Star Wars movie, you've seen 7 and 8, even if you've never seen any of the others, go see it in theaters. I think it's the kind of film that it's worth sitting there and taking it in for 3 hours to experience it for yourself. It's just one of those movies. It's an event movie, and I think events you should see in the best way possible. And for me, if I watched this for the first time, and even if I had a nice fucking home theater setup, I just don't think it'd be the same. And I think you owe it to yourself, if you have any sort of connection to this, to check it out for yourself, make your own opinion, make your own assessment. Again, reaction's been mixed. You may fucking love this movie, and that's totally valid. It's completely valid to like this movie. It's completely valid to think this is the worst piece of shit ever made. Opinions are what they are. I just think that this is the type of movie that, go see it, check it out, see what you think. For me personally, in terms of quality, if we're equating our rating scale to quality, I think it's probably closer to a Blu-ray recommendation. Like, of course, I'm gonna buy that fucking cool ass 4K Skywalker Saga set they're gonna put out, because I want all of Star Wars in 4K, even though I guess it's all on Disney Plus now, basically. But like a cool collector's set like that sounds great. This is a movie that will look excellent in 4K HDR. Looks great in Dolby, looks great in IMAX. So, yeah, it's not my favorite movie. It's not, sure, spoilers for our 2019 A Year in Review episode, it ain't making my top 5, all right? But,
no.
It's got its own merits. It's got its demerits. It's fine. Check it out in theaters, form your own opinion. If you have no connection to Star Wars, maybe wait. I guess that's my only caveat, is wait for it to come to Disney Plus, because it'll be there eventually. So that's it for recommendation, which ordinarily would mean we would be jumping into spoilers right now. But Andrew and I are back from the future to tell you that we once again did it. We once again talked about Star Wars for so many hours that we thought it would be unbearable for our listeners to sit through. That's basically it for this episode, I'm afraid to say. We made the executive decision to split this episode in half, so hopefully you guys have enjoyed our non-spoiler coverage so far. We can promise you spoiler coverage is coming very, very soon. As I mentioned, it's already been recorded, and it'll be up hopefully no more than a few days after you've listened to this, or at least a few days after this has now been available. So, on that note, there's nothing left to say, but thank you for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, please spread the word. We are on Patreon. If you are inclined to support us, patreon.com/watchreviewrepeat, or just head to our website, www.watchreviewrepeat.com. It's 2020, so that's fun. Lots of good things coming out. Our Patreon, I don't think we've decided quite what we're going to do for bonus episodes, but we are hoping, now that we're, getting things back on track, that we'll be able to do, some actual bonus episodes for you guys with some regularity. So we'll keep you posted on that front. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, send those our way, watchreviewrepeat@gmail.com. We are on Twitter at WRRPod. We are on Facebook if you just search for us at Watch Review Repeat. Our intro and outro track is Mechanolith by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under the Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license. And our next episode is, of course, going to be the spoiler coverage for Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. So again, apologies, guys, for letting things get a little too unwieldy, but we just fucking like Star Wars. So it is what it is. Hope you guys have enjoyed what you heard so far, and I hope you guys enjoy what is to come. So on that note, Andrew,
take care now.
Take care.
Bye-bye then.
Later's on the Menjay.